I, 32, female, never expected to be in this situation, and honestly, I'm still trying to process everything that has happened over the past few years. For context, I have 3 siblings, 2 brothers, 35 male and 30 male, and a sister, 28 female. Growing up, we were what I'd consider a normal family. Mom and Dad both worked hard. We lived in a decent neighborhood in suburban Michigan, went on annual family vacations to the lake house, and had the usual sibling squabbles. Dad was a mechanical engineer at a local manufacturing plant, and Mom worked as an administrative assistant at a law firm. Nothing about our family dynamic ever seemed unusual to me. That all changed 5 years ago when Dad was diagnosed with a rare genetic heart condition. The doctors recommended that all of his children get tested to see if we had inherited the gene. My siblings and I agreed, not thinking much of it. When the results came back, my siblings all tested positive for the marker, but I didn't. At first, we thought it was a blessing. I had dodged the genetic bullet, but the doctor seemed confused and suggested additional testing. A week later, the doctor called me personally to come in for a consultation. He was very careful with his words, but the message was clear. According to the genetic markers, there was a 0% chance that my dad was my biological father. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. The doctor suggested I speak with my parents before jumping to conclusions, but I was in shock. I drove around for hours before going home, trying to process this information. When I finally gathered the courage to confront my parents, Mom broke down immediately. She confessed that she had had a brief affair with her boss at the law firm 33 years ago, and I was the result. She swore that she had ended the affair as soon as she found out she was pregnant, and no one, not even her boss, knew the truth. Dad was sitting there stone-faced, and then he said something that broke my heart even more. "I've always known you weren't mine biologically." He explained that he suspected it from the beginning due to timing and some other factors, but he chose to raise me as his own and never wanted me to feel different from my siblings. They had made a pact never to tell anyone, including me. I was devastated. My entire identity felt like a lie. I moved out that weekend, renting a small apartment across town. I needed space to process everything. I told my siblings what I had learned, thinking they would be supportive or at least understanding. I was wrong. Instead of empathy, I got accusations. My oldest brother, Jerry, was especially cruel. He said I wasn't really part of the family and that everything made sense now, why I was always different and never fit in properly. My sister June was crying and saying I had ruined the family by exposing this secret. My younger brother, Jason, simply stopped talking to me altogether. Their reactions hurt more than the initial revelation. I had done nothing wrong. I was just as much a victim of this situation as anyone else. Over the next few months, family gatherings became unbearable. My siblings would make snide comments about my paternity, questioning if I should even be invited to family events. They started calling each other the real siblings and excluding me from group chats and plans. Dad tried to intervene, but he was dealing with his own health issues, and the stress wasn't good for him. Mom was consumed by guilt and couldn't effectively stand up against my siblings' behavior. I started declining invitations altogether, which only seemed to fuel their narrative that I was choosing to distance myself from the real family. Through all of this, I was curious about my biological father. Mom reluctantly gave me his name, Richard Thompson, and told me he still worked at the same law firm, now as a senior partner. I debated for weeks whether to contact him. Eventually, I decided I at least wanted to know my medical history from his side. I sent him an email explaining who I was and asking if we could meet. He responded the next day, clearly shocked but open to meeting. Our first conversation at a quiet coffee shop was awkward but civil. Richard was 65, divorced, and had no other children. He had never known about me and was struggling to process this revelation himself. He asked for a paternity test, which I agreed to, and it confirmed what we already knew. After that, we started meeting regularly and getting to know each other. Unlike my siblings, Richard never made me feel like an outcast or a mistake. He was genuinely interested in my life and who I was as a person. Over the next year, we developed a real relationship. It wasn't quite father-daughter in the traditional sense. The role would always belong to the man who raised me, but we cared about each other. Richard introduced me to his side of the family, most of whom welcomed me with open arms. Meanwhile, the rift with my siblings only grew wider. When Dad's health took a turn for the worse, I was often left out of family discussions about his care. They would make decisions and inform me afterwards as if I were a distant relative rather than his daughter. Dad passed away 2 years ago. At his funeral, Jerry gave the eulogy and spoke about how Dad had been a devoted father to his 3 children, completely erasing me from the narrative despite the fact that Dad had always treated me as his own. He was seated in the second row, not with the immediate family, a deliberate snub orchestrated by my siblings. Richard came to support me, which led to whispers and dirty looks from my mother's side of the family. The reading of Dad's will added another layer of pain. He had left the family home to Mom, his savings split equally among all 4 of us children, and some personal items distributed according to who he thought would value them most. My siblings were furious that I received an equal share, with Jerry arguing that I wasn't entitled to anything since I wasn't really Dad's kid. Despite their protests, the lawyer made it clear that Dad's wishes were legally binding, and I received my inheritance, about $75,000, the same as each of them. I used some of that money to go to therapy, trying to process all the grief, rejection, and identity issues I was facing. My relationship with Mom remained strained but civil. She was caught between her guilt, her grief over Dad, and her desire to keep peace with all her children. My siblings continued to treat me like an outsider, only contacting me when absolutely necessary. 6 months ago, Richard was diagnosed with aggressive pancreatic cancer. Despite the best treatments available, his prognosis was poor. I spent as much time with him as I could, often staying at his house to help care for him as his condition deteriorated. During this time, he updated his will, which I didn't know about until after he passed away 3 weeks ago. At the reading of Richard's will, I learned that he had left me everything: his house in an upscale neighborhood valued at around $800,000, his investment portfolio worth approximately $1.2 million, and his personal effects. I was stunned. We had grown close, but I never expected this. His lawyer explained that since Richard had no other children and was estranged from his ex-wife, he wanted to leave his estate to the only family member he had connected with in his final years. Word about my inheritance somehow reached my siblings, likely through Mom, who I had told about Richard's passing. Within days, all 3 of them were suddenly calling and texting me, expressing condolences that felt hollow given their years of coldness. Then came the real reason for their renewed interest in my life. They believed they were entitled to a portion of my inheritance. Jerry was the first to directly ask, calling me to discuss the family's financial situation. He had the audacity to suggest that I owed the family compensation for the trauma and chaos that my existence had caused. According to his calculation, I should give 70% of my inheritance to be split among them, which would amount to about $700,000 divided 3 ways. His justification was that my selfish decision to uncover my paternity and establish a relationship with Richard had torn the family apart and caused Dad additional stress during his illness. June followed up with a long, emotionally manipulative text about how she was struggling with student loan debt and how this money could heal the family rift if I would just be selfless for once. Jason, who had barely spoken 10 words to me in 5 years, suddenly invited me to lunch and spent the entire time dropping hints about his mortgage troubles and how families should support each other. I was speechless at their hypocrisy. These were the same people who had bullied me, excluded me, and treated me like an unwanted outsider for years. They had made me feel like I didn't deserve to be part of the family because of circumstances completely beyond my control. Now that there was money involved, suddenly I was family again, but only if I was willing to hand over most of my inheritance. I refused all their requests, explaining that Richard's money was his to allocate as he saw fit, and he chose to leave it to me because I was the only one who had built a relationship with him. This sent them into a rage. Jerry accused me of manipulating a vulnerable old man to secure his fortune. June called me selfish and greedy, and Jason suggested I had planned this all along when I reached out to Richard, as if I somehow orchestrated his cancer and his decision to leave me his estate. Then they took it a step further. They approached Mom and convinced her that I owe the family this money. Mom called me in tears, saying that while she didn't personally feel entitled to anything from Richard's estate, perhaps I should consider giving my siblings something to maintain peace. I was hurt that even Mom, who knew how they had treated me, would suggest I owe them anything. The situation escalated yesterday when I received a formal letter from a lawyer representing my siblings, claiming that they were exploring legal options to contest Richard's will based on undue influence and demanding that I agree to mediation to discuss a fair distribution of assets. The letter was full of legal jargon, but essentially baselessly threatening that if I didn't voluntarily give them money, they would take me to court. I immediately contacted my own lawyer, who assured me that their claims had no legal basis. Richard was of sound mind when he made his will. It was properly witnessed and executed, and my siblings had no standing to contest it, as they had no relationship with him whatsoever. Still, the fact that they would go this far has left me reeling. This whole situation has me questioning everything. Am I being really selfish? I didn't ask to be the product of an affair. I didn't intentionally expose family secrets. I only got tested for a genetic condition because my dad, and yes, despite what my siblings say, he will always be my dad, wanted us to be aware of our health risks. I tried to maintain relationships with my siblings despite their cruelty. I built a genuine connection with Richard without any expectation of financial gain. Part of me wants to tell them all to go to hell, but another part wonders if giving them some money would finally end this nightmare. Not because they deserve it, but because maybe it would buy me peace. Then again, I worry that giving in to their demands would just validate their behavior and lead to more demands down the road. I genuinely don't know what to do. Am I the a-hole for refusing to share the inheritance? Should I offer them something just to end the conflict? How do I move forward with or without these people who share my blood but have shown me so little compassion? Any advice would be appreciated because right now I feel completely lost. Update 1. First, I want to thank everyone for the overwhelming support and advice. I was honestly expecting more mixed reactions, but the consensus that I'm NTA has helped me feel more confident in my position. After my post, I met with my lawyer again to review Richard's will and my legal standing. She confirmed what many of you said. My siblings have absolutely no legal claim to any of Richard's estate. She also advised me to cease all direct communication with them regarding the inheritance and to direct any further legal threats to her office. She drafted a formal response to their lawyer, essentially stating that their claims have no merit and any further harassment could result in legal consequences for them. I also took the advice to secure all of my financial accounts and check my credit. I'm glad I did, because I discovered that someone had attempted to open a credit card in my name 2 days ago. I can't prove it was one of my siblings, but the timing is suspicious. I've placed a freeze on my credit and filed a report about the attempted fraud. The most difficult conversation was with my mom. I invited her to lunch and explained that while I understood she's in a difficult position, I need her to stop acting as a mediator in this situation. I told her about the lawyer's letter and how her other children are essentially trying to extort me. She seemed genuinely shocked by how far they had taken things and admitted that she didn't know about the legal threats. Mom broke down crying and confessed that Jerry has been particularly aggressive about this, constantly bringing up the inheritance and strategizing about how to get me to share it. She said he even suggested using her as leverage, knowing I might be more willing to give in if she appeared to support their position. This revelation hurt deeply. The manipulation runs even deeper than I thought. By the end of our conversation, Mom promised to stop enabling their behavior and to make it clear to them that she doesn't support their claims to Richard's money. She also apologized, really apologized, for not standing up for me more over the past 5 years. It felt like the first honest conversation we've had since this whole nightmare began. One surprising development: my sister June reached out privately with a message that seemed somewhat remorseful. She said she's been thinking about how they've treated me and acknowledged that it wasn't fair to blame me for our mother's affair. However, she still maintained that I should consider sharing some of the inheritance as a gesture of goodwill to rebuild the family. While it's a less hostile approach than Jerry's, it still feels manipulative, so I'm proceeding with caution. I've started the process of meeting with a financial advisor to discuss responsible management of the inheritance. Richard worked hard for that money, and I want to honor his memory by being thoughtful about how I use it. I'm considering setting aside a portion for charitable causes that were important to him, particularly pancreatic cancer research. For my own well-being, I'm also scheduled additional sessions with my therapist to work through all of this. The validation from all of you helps, but the family rejection still cuts deep, and I need professional support to process it. I'll update again if there are any significant developments, but for now, I'm focusing on legally protecting myself and taking care of my mental health through all of this. Update 2. Things have escalated quickly in the past few days, and not in a good way. The day after I posted my last update, I received multiple angry calls from Jerry. He had been served with my lawyer's response letter and was furious. I didn't answer his calls, following my lawyer's advice, but he left several voicemails that grew increasingly threatening. In the last one, he actually said, "You'll regret choosing money over family," which I immediately forwarded to my lawyer. Later that evening, I returned home to find my front door unlocked. I'm absolutely certain I locked it when I left for work that morning. Nothing appeared to be stolen, but several things were slightly out of place. Papers on my desk had been moved, and a box where I keep important documents had been opened. The only items of real value that were missing were some family photos, including several childhood pictures of me with Dad. Taking those feels particularly cruel, as they have no monetary value but immense sentimental worth to me. I called the police immediately and filed a report. I can't prove it was one of my siblings, but given the timing and the specific items taken, it seems likely. The officer who took my report recommended installing security cameras, which I did the very next day. I also changed all my locks. The breaking point came yesterday when June called me in tears Apparently, Jerry had convinced both her and Jason that I had promised Richard on his deathbed that I would take care of the family with his money. This is completely fabricated. Richard never even discussed his will with me. And I was as surprised as anyone by the inheritance. But Jerry had been painting me as a manipulative liar who plotted to get Richard's money from the beginning. June was calling because she had started to question Jerry's version of events. When she pressed him for details about when I supposedly made this promise, his story kept changing. She admitted that Jerry has been obsessed with my inheritance, talking about nothing else for weeks and making elaborate plans for how they would spend their share. She also revealed something disturbing. Jerry has been having significant financial problems that none of us knew about. Apparently, he has a gambling addiction that has put him in serious debt, which explains his aggressive pursuit of my money. I thanked June for the information and for having the courage to question Jerry's narrative. While I appreciate her reaching out, I made it clear that I'm still hurt by how all of them treated me over the years and that our relationship can't be repaired overnight, especially not with money as the motivating factor. This morning I received a call from Mom. She was panicking because Jerry had shown up at her house late last night, clearly drunk, demanding that she do something about me. When she refused and told him she supported my right to keep my inheritance, he became belligerent and started breaking things. She had to call the police to remove him from her property. She was shaken but unharmed, and officers helped her file for an emergency protective order against him. I immediately drove to Mom's house to check on her and help clean up the mess Jerry had made. While we were cleaning, she showed me a series of text messages from Jerry that were sent after the police left. In them, he blamed me for everything: the revelation of the affair, Dad's declining health, the family falling apart, and now his conflict with Mom. It was clear from the messages that he's unraveling. Mom and I had a long talk about everything: the affair, how she and Dad handled it, how my siblings treated me, and where we go from here. For the first time, she took full responsibility for her choices and acknowledged how unfair it was that I bore the brunt of the consequences. She also admitted that she had always been too lenient with Jerry, making excuses for his behavior ever since he was a child, which might have contributed to his current sense of entitlement. We agreed that Jerry needs professional help, but that neither of us can force him to get it. For now, Mom will be staying with her sister for safety, and I'll continue to maintain distance from Jerry while documenting any further threats or harassment. As for the inheritance, my lawyer has advised me that given the break-in and escalating threats, we should consider getting a restraining order against Jerry. Jason has been quiet through all of this, apparently retreating when things got heated. But June has been texting me throughout the day, apologizing for her role in everything and expressing concern about Jerry's behavior. I'll update again when there's more to share, but for now, I'm focused on ensuring both Mom's safety and my own while trying to process the rapid deterioration of what little family relationship remained. Update 3. I didn't expect to be posting another update so soon, but the situation has taken a dramatic turn that I need to process. 2 days ago, I received a call from an unknown number, and when I answered, it was Jason, my younger brother, who has barely spoken to me in years. His voice was shaking, and he asked if we could meet somewhere private. I was hesitant, given everything that had happened, but something in his tone made me agree. We arranged to meet at a quiet cafe where we used to go as teenagers. When I arrived, Jason was already there, looking pale and anxious. Once we were seated in a corner booth, he pushed a thick manila envelope across the table to me. Inside were dozens of documents: bank statements, loan applications, screenshots of online gambling accounts, and most disturbingly, a series of emails between Gary and someone named Vic, discussing repayment terms for what appeared to be a loan shark arrangement. Jason explained that after Mom called the police on Jerry, he had gone to Jerry's house to check on him and found him passed out drunk. Concerned about his brother's state of mind, Jason had looked through Jerry's laptop for information about any friends he could call for support. Instead, he found all of these financial documents and realized just how deep Jerry's gambling problems were. According to the records, Jerry is over $350,000 in debt, with some of it owed to potentially dangerous people. But that wasn't all. Among the documents was a partially written email draft to Richard's former law firm, dated about a week after Richard's death, but before the will reading. In it, Jerry was attempting to gather information about Richard's estate and my relationship with him, posing as a concerned family member, worried about undue influence. This proved that Jerry had been plotting to challenge the will even before knowing its contents. Most shocking of all was a crude plan Jerry had typed up, detailing how he would pressure me into giving him money. It including using Mom as leverage, threatening legal action, and this made my blood run cold. A contingency plan to make her life uncomfortable until she pays up. The break-in at my apartment was apparently just the beginning. Jason was clearly shaken by what he had discovered. He apologized repeatedly for how he had treated me over the years, admitting that he had gone along with Jerry's narrative because it was easier than standing up to him. He said he had always known deep down that I wasn't to blame for our parents' choices, but it had been simpler to have a scapegoat for the family's problems. I asked him why he was showing me all of this now, after years of silence and recent attempts to get my money. He said that seeing how far Jerry was willing to go had been a wake-up call. He realized that this wasn't just about money anymore. It was about Jerry's obsession and potentially dangerous behavior. He was genuinely concerned for my safety and for Jerry's well-being. We talked for hours, really talked, for the first time in years. Jason explained that his own participation in the inheritance demands had been half-hearted at best. He had significant student loans but was managing them, and while extra money would be nice, he didn't feel entitled to Richard's estate. He had gone along with Jerry's plan because Jerry had framed it as a unified family stance, playing on Jason's desire to belong and his discomfort with conflict. After our meeting, I went straight to my lawyer with the documents. She was alarmed by their contents, particularly the implied threats. She helped me file for a restraining order against Jerry that same day and advised me to give copies of the documents to the police as well, particularly in light of the break-in at my apartment. Yesterday, I received a call from June. She was with Mom at our aunt's house and had learned about Jason's meeting with me. She wanted me to know that she fully understood now why I couldn't share the inheritance and that she regretted her part in pressuring me. She also revealed that Jerry had been calling her repeatedly, growing increasingly desperate and angry when she wouldn't answer. She was afraid of him now too. Then, just this morning, everything came to a head. I was getting ready for work when I received a series of frantic texts from Mom. Jerry had been arrested overnight. Apparently, he had shown up at my apartment again, not knowing I had installed security cameras. The system alerted me to the intrusion and I immediately called the police, who arrived to find him attempting to break in through a back window. He was taken into custody for attempted breaking and entering, violating the restraining order, and apparently resisted arrest, adding to his charges. Mom was devastated but also seemed relieved in a way. She said that this might be the rock bottom Jerry needs to finally get help. The police found pills in his pocket that appeared to be unprescribed anxiety medication, suggesting he might have substance abuse issues on top of the gambling. Jason called me later to say that he's working with Mom to try to get Jerry into a treatment program as part of any plea deal. He asked if I would consider writing a letter to the court, suggesting rehabilitation rather than jail time, despite everything Jerry has done. I'm still thinking about it. I don't want to see Jerry in prison, but I also need to protect myself. June and Jason have both promised to keep their distance from my finances moving forward. They've acknowledged that their behavior was wrong and that they have no claim to Richard's money. June even offered to help me track down the family photos that were taken during the first break-in, suspecting that Jerry might have them. As for me, I'm still processing everything. There's a part of me that's relieved that the truth is out and that Jerry can hopefully get the help he needs. There's another part that's deeply sad about how broken my family became and how much pain we've all experienced. And there's still anger at Jerry for his manipulation and threats, at my siblings for their years of cruelty, and even at Mom for not protecting me better. I've decided to use some of Richard's money to move to a new apartment in a secure building with better security systems. I'm also continuing therapy and have started looking into support groups for people estranged from family members. The inheritance itself is mostly being invested for now, though I have decided to establish a small scholarship in Richard's name at his alma mater. Mom, Jason, and June have all asked if we can try to rebuild some kind of relationship moving forward. I'm cautiously open to it, but have made it clear that it will take time and consistent effort on their part. Trust, once broken, isn't easily repaired. Thank you all for your support and advice throughout this ordeal. I never expected my family situation to implode like this, but I'm trying to focus on moving forward and building a life that honors both the man who raised me and the man who chose me as his heir. Maybe someday I'll have a family of my own, one built on honesty and mutual respect rather than secrets and manipulation. Stay tuned for more stories from our girl relationships.